Script. Hey, my name is Drew. Drew Callahan. I'm 32 years old, and I work as a Boilermaker out of a union hall in Youngstown, Ohio. If you don't know what a Boilermaker does, the simplest version is this. I fabricate and repair large pressure vessels. Boilers, storage tanks, heat exchangers, the industrial infrastructure that holds things under pressure and keeps them from failing. Most of what I work on is invisible to the people whose lives depend on it. It's behind walls, underground, inside the machinery of buildings and plants and facilities that people use every day without thinking about what is holding everything together. The work is loud and physical and demanding in ways that require both strength and precision, because a vessel that cannot hold its rated pressure is not a vessel, it is a liability. And the difference between a weld that holds and a weld that fails is not always visible to the untrained eye. My father was a Boilermaker. His father was a Boilermaker. I am the third generation to come out of the Youngstown Hall, which is either a tradition or a failure of imagination, depending on who you ask, and I am aware of both interpretations and at peace with neither. I chose the work because I understood it, and I was good at it from the first day I held a torch. Not because it was what the men in my family did. I want that distinction on the record. The work goes in cycles. When I'm on a job, 12-hour days, sometimes more, the particular focused exhaustion of physical labor that uses your mind as much as your body. Between jobs, I pick up maintenance work locally, smaller projects, the kind of steady employment that keeps a tradesman current and keeps the bills paid. I have been steadily employed for 9 years. I have never, in those 9 years, been asked to do something I was not capable of doing. I say this not as a boast, but as a fact about the relationship between competence and confidence, which is a relationship I believe in, and which I have not always been able to extend to parts of my life outside the work. I wake up at 5:15 when I'm on a job, and at 6 when I'm between them. I make coffee, and I eat. Properly, not the way some guys eat. Because the work requires fuel, and I respect the work enough to fuel it correctly. I go to the gym most mornings. I come home, shower, work, eat again, read or watch something in the evening, sleep. The routine is the routine. It has been substantially the same for 4 years, since I moved into the house on Hazel Street that I am renting with the option to buy when the landlord retires, which he has been saying will be in 2 years for the past 3 years. The house is a 2-bedroom on a quiet street in a neighborhood that is not improving or declining, but simply persisting, which I find more honest than either. I have a shop in the garage where I work on smaller fabrication projects in my off hours. Custom metalwork mostly, the kind of thing that keeps your hands in it and your eyes sharp. I have a dog named Cobb, a 4-year-old shepherd mix who was given to me by a guy on my last crew who was moving to an apartment and who has the specific loyalty of a dog who understands he was saved from a worse situation and is making his gratitude known through consistent devotion. I like Cobb considerably. I am not sure I deserve him, but I am trying to. I do not have a wide social life. I have the crew, or the series of crews, since the work moves and the men move with it, and a handful of guys from the hall who I see for drinks a few times a month. I had a relationship that ended 3 years ago, after 2 years, when we understood that what we had built was real, but not large enough for both of us to live in comfortably. She is well. I think of her without grief and without regret, which I understand is the appropriate outcome and which took me about 18 months to arrive at. What I have had since then is the work and the gym and the house and Cobb. And I have told myself that this was enough in the specific way you tell yourself something is enough when you have gotten good at not accounting for the absence. I do not miss company. I miss specific company. There is a difference. I had learned to hold the first thing and let the second one go unaddressed. I go to the gym on West Federal Street called Iron Standard, which is a working gym, not a fitness center. Rubber floors, free weights, no television screens, the smell of chalk and old iron. I have gone there for 4 years. I know the regulars by face and by name and by the specific sounds of their training. The way you come to know the people you share a space with through repetition rather than conversation. I am not unfriendly there, but I am focused, which the regulars understand and respect, because they are focused too. That was the shape of things on a January morning when I was working a set of heavy deadlifts and looked up in the middle of a rest and found a woman I had seen a dozen times before watching me from 4 feet away, and I said, "You want to work in?" And she said, "I was going to ask you the same thing." Her name was Sadie. Sadie Okafor. I had noticed her before in the general way you notice people at a gym you go to consistently. She was there often. She worked hard. She did not need to be noticed to keep working, which is a quality I respect. She was 30, compact and strong in the way that comes from actual training rather than aesthetics, and she had the focused quality of someone who had somewhere to be in her head even when she was standing still. We worked in on the deadlifts, which means we shared the bar and alternated sets, adjusting the weight between us. This is a practical arrangement, and also an intimate one. You are close to another person's effort. You see them under load. You make a wordless agreement to pay attention to each other. I had worked in with plenty of people over 4 years at Iron Standard. With Sadie it was different by the second set, though I could not have told you why at the time. She was strong, stronger than I expected from watching her, which told me she had been training seriously for longer than her gym presence had suggested. She did not perform under the weight. She just moved it, efficiently, with the stillness of someone who had already been through the part where you learn not to fight the bar. I noticed this the way I notice quality in any fabrication, without needing to comment on it. After the third set she said, "You're a Boilermaker." I looked at her. "How do you know that?" "Your hands," she said, "and the way you stand." My uncle was a pipe fitter for 30 years, similar industry. You all stand like you're used to, taking up space under equipment. I looked at my hands. She was not wrong. "What do you do?" I said. "I'm a structural engineer," she said. "Bridges and heavy infrastructure. I work for an engineering firm out of the Canton office." I looked at her. "You design the structures that hold things under pressure," I said. "You build and repair them," she said. "We're the same job from different ends." She said it simply, the way she said most things, without ornament, as a statement of fact rather than a conversational gambit. I noted it. I went back to the bar. We worked in for the rest of that session, and we were at the gym at roughly the same time on Thursday, and we worked in again. And by the end of January, it had become a standing arrangement, without either of us naming it as one. She spotted me on bench press, and I spotted her. And we traded sets, and occasionally talked between them. The kind of conversation that happens in short bursts between effort, direct, efficient, without the social scaffolding that conversations carry elsewhere. I learned things about her in these intervals. She had grown up in Akron, daughter of a Nigerian-born civil engineer father and an Ohio-born mother who taught high school chemistry, which explained both the precision and the bluntness. She had gone to Ohio State for her engineering degree and had been at the Canton firm for 3 years. She had a specific way of looking at structures, not at what they were, but at what they were doing, the forces moving through them, the points under the most load. She did this with buildings when she was in them, and bridges when she crossed them, and I understood this because I did the same thing with pressure vessels. I looked for where the stress would concentrate, where the material would show its character under load. She was funny in a way that took 2 weeks to fully register, because her humor was embedded in the accuracy of her observations rather than in delivery or timing. She told me once, in the middle of a rest between sets, that the particular squat rack nearest the window had a subtle lean of approximately 1 degree that had been there since she started coming, and that it bothered her every single session, and that she was never going to say anything about it to the staff, because it was load-bearing in an entirely different sense. I stared at the rack for a moment. The lean was there. I had walked past it for 4 years. "How long have you known about that?" I said. "First session," she said. "And you've never said anything?" "It's a squat rack," she said. "Not a bridge." I laughed. She went back to the bar. She spotted me the way good spotters spot. Present, attentive, not hovering, hands close but not touching unless needed. Full attention on the lift, without making the attention a performance. This is rarer than it should be. Most spotters are either too distant or too involved, either not watching or trying to help before you need help. Sadie watched. She was ready without being anticipatory. It was the specific quality of someone who has assessed the capacity and trusts the assessment. I noticed this, and I did not say anything about it. I filed it. We built the kind of understanding that comes from working beside someone rather than talking at them. I learned her tells. The slight drop in her shoulders when a lift was going to be good, the way she exhaled before she pulled, the specific stillness she went into between sets when she was running a calculation in her head about the next effort. She learned mine. By February, she knew, from the way I set up, whether I was going to hit the weight or miss it. And she told me once that she had been able to call it with complete accuracy for 3 straight weeks, which she said with the satisfaction of someone who has validated a model. "You're predictable," she said. "In a bad way?" I said. "In a structural way," she said. "I can read the load distribution in your setup. When your hips are in the right position and your lats are engaged correctly, the lift moves. When they're not, it doesn't. It's not mysterious." "Most people don't notice that," I said. "Most people aren't watching," she said. She went back to the bar. She was watching. She had been watching since before I understood she was watching. I understood this in the abstract from the moment Terrence told me about the floor schedule, and I understood it more specifically as the weeks went on, and I began to pay attention to the paying attention. The way she tracked my sets from across the room when we were working separately. The way her eyes came up every time I loaded the bar. The specific quality of readiness she maintained when she was spotting me that was different from the readiness most spotters had, more present, more tuned. There is a term in boiler making for a vessel that has been tested and proven. It is fit for service. The assessment is not about the vessel being perfect. It is about the vessel being sound enough for its rated function, having been inspected and found to have no defects that would cause it to fail under load. I had not, for several years, felt fit for service in the sense of being available to another person in the way a relationship requires. I had been useful to the work, and to the guys on the crew, and to Cobb, who did not ask much of me in the emotional sense. But the larger pressure, the kind that another person's presence generates, I had been running at low load, deliberately, because the last time I had run at full pressure there had been a slow leak I hadn't identified until it had been going for too long. I was aware by March that I was running higher pressure than I had in some time. I was aware that this was because of Sadie. I was not yet doing anything about the awareness. I did one thing. I mentioned her to Marcus, my oldest friend, during a call in early April. I mentioned her by name and in context, and Marcus, who has known me for 22 years and who has heard the full range of what I sound like when I am talking about work versus when I am talking about something else, was quiet for a moment and then said, "Say that again." "The part where you described her training." I said it again. "Drew," he said. "What?" I said. "You just spent 4 sentences on how a woman picks up a barbell," he said, "with the kind of attention you give a joint you're about to weld." I said I didn't know what he meant. "Yes, you do," he said. "Call me when you figure out what you're going to do about it." He hung up. I thought about that call for a week. I thought about the 4 sentences. I thought about the attention I had been paying, without naming it to myself as the kind of attention that requires a response. By March, we had been training together for 2 months, and the arrangement had the quality of something that had always been there. The kind of routine that becomes structural, load-bearing, so integrated into the shape of a week that you only understand how much it was doing when you imagine the week without it. I had thought about this. I was not a person who avoided thinking about things that were happening. I was a person who thought about them carefully and slowly, and held the conclusions until I was certain they were conclusions rather than wishes. What I had concluded, by March, was that Sadi Okafor was the most straightforwardly interesting person I had spent regular time with in several years, and that I looked forward to the mornings at Iron Standard in a way that was not primarily about training. I had not done anything about this. The arrangement was good. I did not want to be the thing that changed it by saying something that altered the terms before I knew what the terms could bear. A man named Terrence had worked at Iron Standard since before I started going there. He was in his early 60s, former competitive powerlifter, who ran the front desk and swept the floor, and occasionally coached the newer members with the efficient patience of someone who had seen every variation of every mistake, and had stopped being surprised by any of them. He had watched me train for 4 years. He had never said anything about my training that was not directly useful. In late March, Terrence said, "You know she restructured her whole schedule to match yours." I was chalking my hands at the chalk bucket. I looked at him. "She came in asking when the floor was least crowded," he said. "About 3 weeks before you two started working in together. I told her the early morning window. She switched from evenings. He went back to sweeping. Just thought you should know that." I stood at the chalk bucket for a moment. I went and did my session. I thought about what Terrence had said for the rest of the day. About Sadie asking about the floor schedule. About the 3 weeks before we started working in together. About the fact that she had been there for several sessions before the morning I looked up and she was standing 4 feet away. I thought about it the way I think about a vessel I am evaluating, looking for what was actually there, not what I wanted to find. What was actually there, she had come to this gym, at this time, in this window, because she had arranged herself to be here. The arrangement was deliberate. The working in had been deliberate. The 4 months of mornings had been deliberate. I thought about what that meant. I thought about what it cost to maintain a discipline like that for 4 months, without saying so. I did not say anything. I told myself I was still gathering information. I told myself I needed to be certain. I told myself all the things I had learned to tell myself when the honest answer was that I was afraid of what happened if I named it and was wrong. The thing arrived from a different direction than I expected. Her name was Diane Marsh. She was a senior partner at the engineering firm where Sadie worked, the Canton office's highest biller, by the way Sadie described her, and a woman who had been in structural engineering since before most of the current staff were in school. She was 63 and effective, and she had a specific and coherent worldview about how a firm should be run and what its priorities should be, and that worldview did not, currently, include the bridge rehabilitation project that Sadie had been developing for 14 months. The project was a detailed assessment and rehabilitation proposal for a state highway bridge in Stark County, a 1962 concrete deck girder that Sadie had flagged as showing early signs of the kind of degradation that gets expensive fast if it is not addressed while the structure is still in the intervention window. She had done the analysis, written the proposal, gotten it to the state DOT's attention. The project was real. The case was solid. Diane Marsh had pulled it from the firm's active proposal list. The reason, as relayed to Sadie by the project director, was that the state DOT contact for Stark County had an existing relationship with a competing firm. And Diane Marsh had decided the political capital required to displace that relationship was not worth the project's scope. A calculation that was, from a business development perspective, coherent. What it was not was correct about the bridge. Sadie told me this on a Wednesday morning between sets. In the flat tone she used when she was reporting facts she had not yet decided how to feel about. She told me the structure. She told me the degradation indicators. She told me what the intervention window was and what happened when you let it close. The bridge needs the work, she said. That is separate from whether the firm gets the contract. What are you going to do? I said. I am going to document my assessment formally, she said, and submit it to the DOT directly as an unsolicited technical note, not as a firm proposal, as a professional engineering obligation. I looked at her. Diane Marsh is going to see that as going around her, I said. Yes, she said. What does that cost you? I said. She was quiet for a moment. I don't know yet, she said. But the bridge is load-bearing. The politics are not. She picked up the bar. I spotted her on the next set. Present, attentive, hands close, full attention. And I thought about what she had just said, and about the specific quality of a person who knows the difference between what is load-bearing and what is not, and applies that distinction even when the non-load-bearing thing could hurt her. She submitted the technical note to the DOT on a Friday. On Monday, Diane Marsh called her into the senior partner's office. I know what happened in that room, because Sadie told me afterward, again in the flat factual tone, sitting on the bench at Iron Standard at 7 a.m, because she had come straight from the office. Diane Marsh had been direct. She had said the firm expected its engineers to operate within the firm's business development framework. She had said that unsolicited direct communications with state agencies outside the firm's proposal process created complications for existing relationships. She had said she understood Sadie's technical concern, but that the concern had a proper channel and Sadie had not used it. Sadie had said, the proper channel resulted in the proposal being removed from the active list. The bridge's degradation rate doesn't adjust to the firm's business development calendar. Diane Marsh had said she expected Sadie to understand the distinction between her role as an engineer and her role as an employee of this firm. Sadie had said, when those two things are in conflict, I know which one I was licensed for. She said this to me on the bench at Iron Standard, and I sat beside her and did not say anything for a moment. Are you still employed? I said. For now, she said. She didn't terminate me. She said it would be noted. What does noted mean? I said. It means she's watching to see if I do it again, she said. Will you? I said. She looked at me. The look she gave things she had already decided. If the bridge needs it, she said. I looked at my hands. You're right, I said. The bridge is load-bearing. I know, she said. I mean about all of it, I said. The thing you said to her. You were right. She looked at me. Something shifted in her expression, not the Diane Marsh expression. Not the assessment expression, something quieter than those. You came straight here, I said. Yes, she said. Not home first, I said. Not the office. Here, she was quiet. I come here every morning, she said. She said it in a different register than the flat factual tone. Quieter, more deliberate. The register of something that has been held back for a while and is being set down. I come here every morning, and I did not always come here in the mornings. I restructured things so I would be here in the mornings. Terrence told you. I looked at her. He told me, I said. I know he told you, she said. He told me he told you. That was 3 weeks ago, and you didn't say anything, and I was waiting to see if you would. I was still thinking about it, I said. She looked at me with the expression she gave structures she was assessing, the forces moving through them, the points under load, what they were actually doing rather than what they appeared to be doing. I only come here for you, she whispered. I have been coming here for you since October. That is 7 months of 5:30 in the morning, Drew. And I have never said anything, because you didn't. And I didn't know if you were not saying it because you didn't feel it, or because you were still deciding. She looked at the rubber floor. I am not a person who waits well, she said. I am telling you that in the interest of full disclosure. I had been telling myself I was still gathering information. I had been telling myself I needed to be certain. I understood, sitting on the bench at Iron Standard at 7 in the morning, beside a woman who had come here straight from the hardest conversation of her professional year, because this was where she came. That I had been certain for a long time, and had been using the thinking as a way to avoid the saying. There is a test in boiler making called a hydrostatic pressure test. You fill a vessel with water. You pressurize it to 1.5 times its rated working pressure, and you look for leaks. The vessel does not fail the test because the pressure is too high. The vessel fails the test because of something that was already wrong, a flaw in the weld, a defect in the material that the pressure reveals. The test does not break the vessel. It shows you what was always there. I had been waiting for certainty. The certainty had been there for months. I had just been running at ordinary pressure, and now it was 1.5 times that, and there was nothing wrong with the weld. October, I said. The first Monday in October, she said. I asked Terrence about the floor schedule on a Thursday, and came in that Monday. You watched me for 3 sessions before you said anything, I said. I needed to see how you were with other people in the room, she said, whether you were the same when no one was watching. And? I said. You helped a kid re-rack weight he'd loaded wrong without making him feel stupid about it, she said. You could have walked past. You stopped. You showed him the right position, and then you went back to your session like it hadn't happened. I looked at the floor. I almost walked past, I said. I know, she said. I watched you decide. That was the part that mattered. I looked at her on the bench at Iron Standard in the early morning with the rubber floors and the chalk smell and the iron, and she had come straight here after the hardest morning she'd had in years, and she had said the things she had been carrying since October, and she was not performing anything. Not composure, not vulnerability, not the careful management of how she was presenting. She was just Sadie, in the gym, waiting for me to stop thinking and say the thing I had been thinking. I'm sorry it took me this long, I said. I know why it took you this long, she said. That doesn't make it I know, she said. Say the thing, Drew. I have been coming here for you, I said. Not since October. Since I understood what October meant, which took me until about January, and another month after that, to be willing to call it what it was. I have been coming here for you since January, and I told myself I was waiting to be certain, and I was certain, and I was afraid, and I am done using the one as an excuse for the other. She looked at me. The assessment expression, but warmer than it usually was. The way a structure looks when you find it sound. Good, she said. She leaned across the bench and kissed me. It was not tentative, and it did not perform itself. It was the specific quality of a thing that has been exactly this close for 7 months and has finally arrived. She pulled back. The squat rack still leans, she said. 1 degree, I said. It has bothered me every single session, she said. I'll talk to Terrence, I said. Don't, she said. It's not load-bearing. 8 months after Sadie Okafor told me the only reason she came to Iron Standard was me, we fixed the squat rack. Not because I asked Terrence. Because Sadie brought a level 1 morning, confirmed the lean was exactly what she thought, and shimmed the base with a piece of rubber she had in her bag, the same kind she used to level field equipment on uneven ground. She did it between sets on a Tuesday, with Terrence watching from the front desk, and when it was done she tested it and put the level away and went back to her workout. Terrence looked at me. She's good, he said. I know, I said. The Diane Marsh situation resolved in the way these situations resolve, when the facts are on one side and the politics are on the other, and the facts are about something structural. The DOT engaged a third firm to assess the Stark County Bridge, a different firm than Sadie's and different from the politically connected competitor, and the third firm's assessment confirmed everything Sadie's technical note had documented. The rehabilitation project was funded. Work started in the spring. Diane Marsh did not acknowledge this directly. What she did, in February, was assign Sadie to lead the firm's infrastructure assessment team for a new DOT partnership that had come through a different contact, a larger engagement than the Stark County project, with more resources and more scope. She did this without comment, in the way that people with good judgment sometimes demonstrated after the fact, rather than before. Sadie told me about it the way she told me most things, flat, factual, covering the information in the order that made the logic visible. I asked her what she made of it. The bridge needed the work, she said. Now it's getting it. The rest is business. She picked up the bar. I live with the specific satisfaction of a man whose life has become fuller in concrete and measurable ways. Sadie is at the house on Hazel Street most weekends, and 2 or 3 evenings a week, which Cobb has received with a devotion that I find both touching and slightly embarrassing, because he has transferred his complete loyalty to her on the basis of 2 interactions that involved treats. She tells me this is not disloyal of him, but rational. I tell her she should not encourage him. She gives him a treat. She brings her work home sometimes, not the office work but the field work. The notebooks from site visits with sketches and measurements, and the specific notation of someone who reads structures the way I read vessels, looking for where the load concentrates, where the material is showing its character, where the thing will hold and where it needs support. I look at these notebooks sometimes, with her permission. They are the clearest record I have seen of how another person's mind works, which is the most intimate thing you can know about someone. My father came to Youngstown in October. He had met Sadie once before, briefly. On this visit she and I cooked dinner, and he sat in the kitchen in the way my father sits in kitchens, quietly, watching the room, not needing to fill it, and at some point he said something to Sadie about the bridge in Stark County, which he had read about in the Canton Repository because his cousin lives out that way. He said he had seen the report about the third-party assessment. He said it had been a close thing, timing-wise. Another year and the intervention window would have closed. Sadie said, I know. He said, how did you know it needed attention before the others did? She said, I drove over it enough times that I knew what the right sound was. And then one day it wasn't quite that anymore. My father looked at her for a moment. Then he looked at me. Then he looked back at his dinner. He did not say anything else. He did not need to. I had spent most of my working life understanding that the strength of a vessel is not visible until it is tested. That what holds is not what appears solid, but what was built correctly, with the right material, with welds that were laid down properly and inspected and trusted to perform when the pressure came. That the test does not make a vessel strong, it reveals whether the strength was already there. I think about October sometimes. About a woman who drove over the same bridge enough times to hear the wrong note in it, who asked about a floor schedule and restructured her mornings, and showed up and did the work beside me for 7 months, without saying the things she was saying, with every single rep of every single set. Because she needed to see if I was the same when no one was watching. I almost walked past the kid with the wrong weight. I stopped. I showed him the right position. I went back to my session. She watched me decide. Maybe that is what it comes down to. Not the large demonstrations, not the things you do when someone is watching and the stakes are visible. The small corrections you make when no one will notice, when the only reason to do it is that it is the right thing, when the cost is nothing more than a few seconds of a Tuesday morning at a gym you have been going to for 4 years. She noticed. She came back. I am glad I stopped.